All right, team. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday, everybody. My name is Carlos Garcia. I'm the founder and CEO of GAR Capital. Welcome aboard to our weekly recap here on YouTube. But this is also going to be on our Spotify channel as well, kind of a simulcast with the podcast. So if you're someone that usually listens to the podcast every day, you can watch this on YouTube if you want more of a visual. If you're someone who just prefers to listen on the podcast and no need for the visual, then Spotify is the way to go. Welcome aboard, GAR Capital. Glad to be with you. August 25th, 2024. Almost done with the month of August. It's been quite a ride. But we got some things to go over. Big week this week, at least for one major reason. NVIDIA earnings are on Wednesday after the bell. So you already know that's going to be big. Other than that, we just had Jackson Hole. We just got the green light from Jerome Powell that we will be now easing, meaning cutting rates. I know I've been repeating that over and over, all about the Fed. It is important. That's why we talk about it. It's not just price action all the time. We got to have the macro that supports higher asset prices. I get into a little more detail in what to expect in this easing cycle on the podcast episode from Friday. Make sure to check that out. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Appreciate that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the week. Right now, I'm going to be showing on the screen our Discord server. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a scrolling little bar on the bottom that gets you access to the live market blog on Discord, and that is free. So access to the server is free, but the actual signals are not. That's a paid subscription. So I'm going to go over some of the week itself in terms of options trading. This is just the signal service. We had 3 out of 4 this week, 75% win loss. The Apple 230 calls that we opened last week, they did not hit. They chopped us up as we went. I'm going to go over each of these. IWM 215 calls hit in the money, deep in the money. Tesla 230 calls, 43%. IWM, the 215 calls, 33%, but the runners went big, went as high as 320%. NVIDIA calls, we had the 128 calls. We closed for 43%. Those runners got as high as 100%. So NVIDIA, Tesla, and IWM, all with runners, if you held, you can leave one contract or whatever you prefer. They hit as high as 100 on NVIDIA, 100 on Tesla, and 320% on IWM. IWM being small caps. We've been kind of talking about that over and over. I think IWM now we've been hitting for a couple of times the past couple of months. Work sometimes it hasn't. So I still say small cap summer is in full effect. So let's go over these 4 together and see what happened. So with NVIDIA, we had the 128 calls, pretty easy. I still expect more for NVIDIA, but they report earnings on Wednesday. So again, we know the IV is going to be very, very expensive, the implied volatility. So that means the contracts are going to be more expensive. But we got above this key level of resistance, 125, 124.94. We closed at 129.37. This is part of my watch list this week. Earnings are this week. So we're looking at a couple things. 135.67, that is your peak from July 8th. That's where we fell. 140.76 being the all-time highs. We're above major moving averages. We are above the 20, the 50, the 100, and the 200 day. So I still fully expect that as long as we stay above 125, 135 is next. Now, 140 could definitely be a possibility initially with NVIDIA. This is where I'm concerned with, is that when we get the number, we'll get initially a pop to 140.76 to tag those all-time highs, possibly some heavy supply area where a lot of people who traded, maybe who bought NVIDIA at $100 a share during that pullback are probably taking some profit. So again, just be careful. Know the levels you're looking for. We might just chop around Monday and Tuesday as NVIDIA is expecting a move higher. I am pretty certain that the 140 calls for this week, this Friday, will have the most volume on the board in terms of all NVIDIA calls. Granted, there may be many who want to hedge. Maybe they'll buy the 125s, the 120s, but I still think with this move higher, again, this past Friday and the nice bounce that we've gotten, the expectation is still higher for NVIDIA. Let's go and take a look at the RSI. And this is the relative strength indicator compared to the S&P 500. And we are not overbought quite yet. Almost, kind of. We're at 59.92, getting there. 70 or above would be overbought. We're about 11 points away from that, maybe 10. So I think that gives us enough room to get us to at least 135. I like the 135 calls for this week the most because it'll be the closer strike, but it's going to be expensive. So there's other ways to trade this. It doesn't have to be NVIDIA. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the indices and the tickers that I'm watching that maybe we don't want direct NVIDIA exposure, right? Just on an option, because that'd be very binary. It's either going to hit or it's going to be zero, depending on how you want to do it, puts or calls. Again, personally, I expect NVIDIA to move higher. But again, that's reaction. Let's see, at least based on the price action. Anything could happen. They could have horrible guidance. They could miss the quarter completely. I have no inside info on that, just based on the actual charts itself. I think 135.67 to 135 or so is your zone that it's going to tag. I'm just worried that if we tag 140.76, oh, the all-time highs, we'll go ahead and reject. That's the one thing I'm concerned with, at least short term. If we are doing based on the previous fib levels and previous Fibonacci levels, I'm going to remove here the RSIs. And you can see, based on where NVIDIA is, that 135.67 level. That is a key level of resistance back from July 8th. And also June 18th, we only had a spike to 147.76. So that could be just kind of one of those big pop-up moves, kind of just break resistance slightly and pull back. So looking forward, 135.67 is, to me, not exactly all-time high, but probably heavy resistance area. And if we go ahead and zoom out a little bit, we can take a look at our Fibonacci extensions. The 100% being the all-time highs before before we broke out of it back in May, which was right around 97.26. This is post-split, post-stock split, if you remember. Then we retested 97.32, that zone of all-time highs, and we bounced rather nicely. And if we were to continue to go higher, 150.78 is your 161.8 extension. That's your golden Fibonacci extension. Now, again, for those who are extremely bullish, you would go a next leg higher. Let's just say, again, I don't expect this. 261.8 Fibonacci level would be 237.28. And that's quite a stretch, but I still expect NVIDIA to move higher. We're going to use 135.67 as kind of the target. So that's right about $6. We may just get that on Monday, to be quite honest. We may just get a push into these contracts preparing for this earnings report that it may just boost the stock itself. It happens. So NVIDIA, we caught that nice move. Remember, we talked about this gap here. We filled it at 120, and then we continue higher to 125. So NVIDIA, with this breakout of this trend line, has been doing exactly what we expected. Tesla, we traded Tesla. And again, I still think Tesla has a little more. 236.52. We're still hugging on top of that downward channel here. And we're still above major moving averages. We're still in a golden cross. So I still like in Tesla to 245.67. I just prefer a break of 236.52 is all. But again, a great move on Tesla. I'm glad we caught that little push higher. And IWM, which is part of my watch list again this week. I still like small caps. We're going to get back to 226.65 or so. I'm keeping an eye on the 225 calls. But again, beautiful bull flag breakout, then pull back, and then back again above this upward flag. Let's call that upward wedge. Either way, I was kind of thinking wedge, flag. How do you want to call it? It's wedge, upward wedge. So 220.38 is where we are on IWM currently. So that's where we got those three. And this is what happened to us on Apple. We just really chopped. That's pretty much it. Look at the daily. Really, since the 16th, it's been stuck in a range between 228 to around 225. About a $3 range in the past 5 days. We're still expecting this gap up higher to 230, 210. That might happen with the iPhone announcement. That's going to happen in September. So we just ran out of time there. We got as high as 35% on Apple. Unfortunately, we just didn't close it. But for those who caught it, we've had a really great week. But nuances, here and there. It's all about timing, and we'll see what we get moving forward. Masterclass, I went ahead and sent out 2 SPY trades. We did SPY 560 calls on the 19th at 258, and then we did SPY again, I think it was on the 15th for the August 23rd expiry, this Friday that just passed at 271. So we caught both. Again, it was just expecting that levitation with the Fed coming in at least a little dovish, but we got them on Monday. Monday was a nice day for stocks as we kind of chopped around, got a little volatile here and there. In terms of the week, the 19th is where we got the nice push on NASDAQ, and then we got it midday on Tuesday, pulled back a little bit. Thursday being a down day, and then Friday being higher. So we've just been kind of watching the landmines, so to speak, in terms of what to expect in terms of the market. I mean, it's easy to look back now and say, yeah, of course we saw it and everything, but every day is something new to worry about, and anything could be flipped, as we saw earlier this month. All it takes is one yen carry trade, and that's it. Everything gets sold off. So here's the three that I'm looking at for the week. Obviously, in video, we just went over it. So I'm looking at SPY, and SPY is interesting. SPY actually has, if we go back, we have an inverse head and shoulders back in October of 2023. 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. That's back in May, April into May. Remember that OPEX when we had that pullback, and then 1, 2, 3. So I have a better looking chart for those on YouTube watching. On Watches and Charts, I already posted early this morning, and you can see September, November, December inverse head and shoulders of 2023. April, May, June inverse head and shoulders into this year. June, July, August inverse head and shoulder. All higher highs, all higher lows. That's from where we were at the lows of 414 on SPY on that first head and shoulders. 414 on SPY, all the way to 562.29 currently. We have another leg up to go. We're just preparing ourselves for how much. So, with that being said, we're at 562.13. 560, 516 is all-time highs. Prepare yourself for, I believe that will be broken this week. Again, obviously, if we have an NVIDIA earnings that is better than expected or has a better response or a better reaction than expected, then yes, SPY will move higher. So I think we should prepare ourselves for the 565 calls. That will probably have the most volume on the board for this week. 570s are a possibility, just really depends. I think 565 up to 568 should be that money target. I'm pretty sure when it comes to NVIDIA earnings ahead of that, that's where SPY is going to get the juice. So SPY, I expect more due to those inverse head and shoulders. If we go to QQQ, it's very, very similar. Got one large head and shoulders here. I drew it here. This is from July 15th, August being the lows that we just had with that flash crash or whatever you want to call it, that correction. And then another on the right shoulder this month. So I do expect more room to go. We can go as high as 500 on QQQ. Just really depends on what NVIDIA does. In terms of my target, I like 490. 490 be the next target. Just hold above 475. If you notice, it's right around every $5 is kind of what we're looking for. We also have a gap to fill on QQQ at 493, which makes me even more interested in taking a look at QQQ for calls. We can possibly use QQQ as calls to give us some exposure to the NVIDIA earnings. Now, it won't be just purely NVIDIA that moves it, but it will move it. At least QQQs give you spreads out a little bit of the risk because there'll be Apple, Microsoft, and the other guys. But NVIDIA just alone, obviously, we know it's going to be expensive. We'll watch for the prices on Qs. I fully expect 490. So I like the 490 calls to the 493 strike. That'll fill us that gap there on QQQ. I talked about IWM as well, that wedge, the break above 219.60. I'm looking for 226, maybe the 225 calls if there is some volume there, but we can always buy time on that. Did we fill that gap? We did fill that gap at 228.63 on the daily. So let's see if we can retest that up there and see if the bulls give us a little bit more buying up there. So SPY, IWM, QQQ, we talked about NVIDIA, all that good stuff. And all of this watch list is for our options members. We also have a futures watch list that'll be posted later. This is on every Sunday, but this video is public for all. So I want everyone to be watching the market this week for more upside potential. The question remains, does NVIDIA take us home? We put on some reports from Morgan Stanley regarding risk reward on NVIDIA. That is free for all. Take a look at it, and more great stuff to look at and research on our blog, and of course on our Discord server. We'd love to have you on board. So expect it to be a bullish week. Let's see in regards to continuation what we have. I have two trades open. We have Qualcomm calls. I fully expect that to break 176.71. Very similar to Apple. Last couple of days I've just chopped. So once we get to 176.71, we're knocking on the door on Qs. We're knocking on the door on SPY. We're knocking on the door on, well, not small caps, but Qs and SPY are knocking on the door. I believe that we fully break out. Qualcomm will be a beneficiary. I think it gets to above 180. And then we have Citibank, the banks, above 62.82 is where I'm expecting us to go. Really is to get back to 64. But we did fill that slight gap here at 62, exactly 61.97, and we're still above this trend line as we recaptured it. I still like the banks. JPM hit all-time highs as well. I like Citibank really to 70, but it's going to take some time. Maybe September, wink, wink. We get that rate cut. Maybe we get 50 basis points. Fingers crossed. Banks are going to go higher due to the refinance volume for real estate and mortgages. Should be good, depending on who's going to refinance and whatnot. We can't really predict that. But in that regard, I still like the banks. I still like small caps. Obviously, tech is going to be in the forefront because of NVIDIA's earnings. In terms of the week, August 3rd to last trading day, which would be Wednesday, the S&P is up 19 years in a row, 2003 to 2021, but it was down in 2022, down 0.7%. There's an expectation that on Wednesday, hello, NVIDIA's earnings, it's a green day, historically speaking. August next to last trading day, the 29th on the Thursday, S&P is down 18 of the last 27 years. And then the last trading day in August, which would be Friday, the 30th, the S&P 500 is up 13 of the last 23 years, but it is down 5 of the last 8. And actually speaking, we thought August was a little wild. September is not exactly a bullish month either. So let's see what we can get moving forward and see if we can take advantage. If we get any pullback in September, we just had one, but the expectation is even with these rate cuts, it's really all eyes on the election. That's really what the market is trying to price in. I guess they don't know who the winner is going to be yet. Obviously, election day being November, I think we'll get a little more clarity on where the market goes from there. But that's still an overhang. Still an overhang, of course, stuff we can't control, but that's the stuff we got to move with. And we will see what we get in about 70 days. All right. So that's where we are for the week. Thank you guys so much for joining me. People on the podcast, people on the YouTube, you guys are great. Thank you for everything as well. Nick will take it from here in terms of the futures. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the morning note. Cheers all.